Alright, it's time for another edition of Road Rage because I'm on another trip from southern Arizona to northern Arizona and I'm stuck in a car for a long time. So let's talk about net neutrality. I consider myself a conservative and I'm on this weird side of the left, I guess, because I think net neutrality is a good thing. So let's just recap what net neutrality really is. Basically what it's saying is that internet service providers, or ISPs, have to treat each bit neutrally. Like they can't prioritize bits being sucked down from one source or throttle down or slow down bits coming from another source. And this came about because some ISPs were doing just that. Like they said, oh, Netflix is taking up too much bandwidth. So they decided to... Sorry, my dog's trying to crawl on my lap while I'm driving. Not good. Back, Grover. So, while negotiating with Netflix to have Netflix cough up some money, all of a sudden customers with, I think it was Verizon or Comcast, I forget which one, all of a sudden their connectivity to Netflix sucked. They could go everywhere else on Verizon or Comcast just fine, but trying to stream Netflix sucked until Netflix, Comcast, or Verizon, whoever it was, tweaked their arm enough to have them cough up some extra money. And that actually slowed down internet innovation. And so they started thinking about it, and they said, you know what, this isn't a good thing. We're going to have ISPs treat everything, all bandwidth, as neutral. It doesn't matter where it comes from or where it's going. You just treat it the same. And ISPs are free to charge customers for using more bandwidth. My ISP definitely does. So it's not like they don't have a way to recoup the revenue. It's just keeping it, it's up to you where you suck that bandwidth from. And ISPs can't throttle stuff. And the reason why that's good is obviously there's the commercial reasons where certain sites can get throttled and certain sites prioritize. Like say Comcast or Verizon wants to have their own competing thing against Netflix. And so they create their own service. They throttle traffic that's going to Netflix, and they prioritize traffic going to the Verizon or Comcast alternative, and just kind of run with that in your mind, all the various things that could happen there commercially. And you can see how net neutrality is probably a good thing. And my ultra-conservative people immediately jumped on the bandwagon and said, oh, net neutrality is horrible. And they came up with a lot of interesting reasons why net neutrality should go, of which I plan to take apart right now. One of the interesting ones I heard was, well, this is a form of lawfare. Comcast and these other ISPs, they want net neutrality because it causes this legal hurdle, and the smaller ISPs can't handle the legal burden of having to maintain net neutrality. What a bunch of BS. Horse crap. I'll just call it straight as it is, pardon my French. But it's like, how big of a legal department does it take to say, okay, we're not going to throttle any data coming through our ISP. We're just going to let it flow through. Doesn't matter where it's from. When you need the legal departments is when you start screwing around with various sources of data and prioritizing them or nerfing them or whatever. That's when you need a legal department. So that argument is just stupid. And then the other argument I heard, well, the internet's been around and it worked just fine before net neutrality. We don't need net neutrality now. Well, that's kind of a false statement. High-speed bandwidth and video streaming has not been around forever. The internet's not been around forever. Mainstream use of the internet is like mid-90s on. High-speed cable modems where you could get in the megabit range are probably like late 90s, early 2000s. And then video streaming with like YouTube and Vimeo and all these other sites, that has really been 7 years, 5 years, something like that, where you finally had enough speed to where you just kind of take it for granted that you can stream video whenever you want. So to say, oh, the internet's been around forever and there were no problems, yeah, there were problems. Why do you think net neutrality got passed? Is because you could kind of see where ISPs were starting to game things, and some smart people said, oh, this isn't a good thing. This will actually hurt internet innovation. And, another argument is, well, this is Obama. Net neutrality is the Obamacare for the internet. 2 points there. For one, bad kings sometimes do good things. Now, the vast majority of what Obama did in office, I disagree with. And another thing to do is net neutrality. Some of it, I think some of the initial parts of the law date back pre-Obama to like the mid-90s. I could be wrong on that. Check up yourself. But not the full-blown net neutrality, but some rumblings and regulations started way back then. So to say, oh, it's the Obamacare, it's not all regulations are equal. It's like saying that regulating restaurants, oh, that's the Obamacare of restaurants. It's like, enjoy your rat, turd, and cockroach salad. Not all regulation's bad. I, as a conservative, think regulation should be more of a last resort rather than a first resort. But yeah, it's not all bad like some would like to have you think it is. And then another point is, well, corporations like Comcast and stuff, they want net neutrality gone, even though they say they don't. I forget who it was, Comcast or Verizon, one of them. They had a website up, a webpage up, talking about how they're very pro net neutrality and blah, blah, blah. They took that down after the FCC commission, I forget what his name is, brought up the fact that he wanted to bring this up for a vote again. Poop, that page is gone. They want to be, and actually they already talked about having a high-speed plan, where they can start charging you for various services and all this stuff, rather than just charge you for better bandwidth speeds and charge you by the amount of bandwidth you use. Now it's going to be to which sites, the streaming package. If you want YouTube and Netflix, you got to get the streaming thing. Super package, if you want all that, then I guess Netflix is great. If you don't, I don't like it. And this whole thing about, well, what's good for corporations is good for America, or put it more broadly, what's good for big business is good for America. I mean, not always. I mean, I'm a capitalist because it's the freest economic system. I'm not necessarily enamored of people getting super wealthy and abusing their power, but compared to socialism and communism and mixtures of them, your basic capitalism blows them out of the water as far as producing wealth and for your general public and such. It's definitely a good thing, I would say. But anyway, there's more points on that. I just saw a lot of stupid arguments for Netflix. Oh yeah, what's good for corporate America is usually good for all of us, right? Well, except for when Bayer made all those contaminated blood products. It was good for them to recoup the losses by, selling them overseas, since they couldn't get away with selling them here. And, remember big business at the turn of the century where they take little kids and work them 14, 15 hours a day? And we're basically totally cool doing that. So I don't think, no, not now, dude. All right, dude, go. Sorry. It's at night, and I'm driving on a single lane, well, 2 lanes, but one each way, a highway, where there's lots of deer and occasional elk that pop out. So am I going slow? No, but I'm not going super fast, and if people want to pass me, that's just fine. Just don't do it into oncoming traffic. But anyway, so yeah, net neutrality I think is a good thing. It looks like the momentum is to take it away, and I think it'll really stifle the internet. I mean, look at it. If corporations are free to start throttling stuff, right now we have corporate HR departments that are gun-shy about using just 2 genders. They're going to go to a multiple gender model and all these other political correctness things that they're constantly bowing on. You think under pressure that they won't start throttling traffic based on political stuff? Like, oh, sure, the internet's free, but how come when I go to this site, Alex Jones or InfoWars or something, It's super slow, but see that, boom, it's like right there, lightning fast. And another stupid argument I heard, well, net neutrality enables Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and all these snowflakes in San Francisco to censor you. Net neutrality has nothing to do with that. They absolutely are censoring conservatives, sure. But it has to do with just the people who run it, their internal systems, they're hiding content and nerfing stuff. It's got nothing to do with bandwidth. But if net neutrality passes and they have the capability to start nerfing bandwidth, like Google's a quasi-ISP, actually the Google Fiber, you think they possibly won't start, doing stuff based on politics as well as commercial interests? Come on, people. Net neutrality is a good thing, and it's dumb to take it away. And it was a problem that your average American wasn't going, oh, man, the average American's more concerned about competition between ISPs, which basically is non-existent. I mean, you got on, I'm not a big fan of John Oliver, but go ahead and Google John Oliver's net neutrality, the way he takes it apart. I mean, we're like 23rd for high-speed internet. In a big country like ours, that doesn't really surprise me because we got a lot of rural areas. And, where I live, you can get gigabit in Ethernet or internet if you want. That's friggin' fast. But I was surprised when I was overseas in Eastern Europe that, their internet's faster than a lot of places in California and Cox Cable down in Arizona, a lot of their plans. I was like, wow, that's cool. But at the same time, it's kind of like a bad statistic to just take the U.S. as an aggregate and go, oh, we're 23rd. It depends on the areas and stuff. To compare us to, say, Bulgaria, where they've got a couple big cities with fast internet, and compare that to the U.S., which has a big infrastructure that, in the big cities it's faster, and it takes a long time to maybe, because our infrastructure for internet went in earlier, it's apples to oranges. But anyway, we do have a problem where we are lagging behind other countries. That statistic I'll buy. And I don't think by giving the big powers that be in the internet business, it's going to make competition any more fierce. If anything, that'll drown out the little guys. So that argument's out the window in my book. So net neutrality, I just saw a lot of stupid stuff come from the quote conservatives, and it's funny. I called out a bunch of them. Not a single, one guy responded out of 20 that I engaged with. And he said, kind of, you're stupid. And I said, no, this is why it's not stupid. And then didn't hear back after that either. So, yeah, net neutrality, it going away is going to be a bad thing. And it's going to really hurt the internet. A couple of other stories that I'll talk about. I saw on, I think it's Eurasian Review, a story about how U.S. intelligence believes that North Korea transferred 3 nuclear weapons to Iran. And there's been rumors going on for a long time about the Iranian-North Korean axis. And your typical kind of left-wing person who doesn't want to face reality just blows that off as, just stupid conservatives trying to want to get more money for the military-industrial complex and demonize Iran and North Korea. And then conspiracy theorists will blow it off. There's just neocons trying to create a more aggressive North Korea in the minds of America and Iran so that we can go attack them. And I don't deny that there may be neocons that aren't trying to pull that off. But the bottom line is there is evidence that there is collusion between North Korea and Iran. And if 3 nuclear weapons were transferred, that is really bad. And the reason I bring that up is because there's people that are basically telling you that we are going to war with North Korea. And no one's really listening. And one of the things, I wouldn't call myself a student of history or a scholar or anything like that. I'm just a dude with an internet connection, a poli-sci degree. It's a little bit wacko. But I do read somewhat, and I do see patterns. And one of the patterns I see is when events are about to happen, usually leaders, both good and bad, will tell you what they're going to do. They'll just flat out tell you, like Hitler before World War II, he pretty much told you what he was going to do. But everyone blew him off. Said, you won't really do that. Well, silly us, right? And I think it's the same thing with Trump and the Trump administration. They're telling the world that this situation is going to be taken care of, to paraphrase Trump. And you listen to Mathis and all these other guys talking about the chance for war going up daily, and everyone's just kind of like, they're just bluffing. Well, Trump might be bluffing, but the problem is these bluffs, because they're not getting any support, because China's going, you're just bluffing. China has helped North Korea probably with missile components and all various other covert forms of aid and overt forms of aid. We try to get China to rein in their trade with North Korea. They go, we'll do something. They do something for a couple days, and then it's business as usual. Nothing's really changed. So the Chinese are not taking us seriously. And I think China was the biggest way to resolve this problem, the Chinese influencing North Korea. I think it would be a real stretch to have North Korea give up their nuclear weapons, but something might happen, like maybe them halting it where they're at. And now China decided, this isn't really our problem. It's more of a thorn in the USA side, so we're just going to leave it. And, if there's blowback because there's a war with North Korea and China's got to deal with millions of refugees and it's a big problem for them, it is what it is. You had your opportunity and you blew it. I mean, people like James Rickards, who wrote Currency Wars, he's a guy that I actually listen to. I don't think he's right all the time, but, none of these guys are prophets. None of them are talking directly with God. So I listen to them as, scholarly wise men that I think God has given them wisdom, people like Rickards and some others, like USA Watchdog and stuff, although he's more fringe, and some other things that occasionally I'll watch. Alex Jones even. It's like I watch them, and they make predictions, and they're not always right, but generally the trends that these guys are on, especially Rickards, who deals with financial stuff, has worked with the CIA developing financial models, is well respected, and he's saying that all the people he's talking to are saying we're going to war, and it's going to be like within 12 weeks. And everybody's like, meh, it's all bluff, we aren't going to war. And then you see all these exercises that are happening, and at first I was like, this is nothing. You see a couple B-1s fly up to the North Korean border and fly back, and then you see them escorted by South Korean planes, F-16s, and then you see them escorted by F-35s and F-22s, and then you start seeing all of a sudden there's 3 carrier battle groups around North Korea, and then those carrier battle groups disperse. And then now we're starting to see ground units involved, where there's like 17,000 troops, a lot of them not a lot of them, I actually don't know, but I assume some of them not currently stationed in North Korea that were rotated in. So once I see those ground troops start moving, I think what all this stuff is feints. When you start seeing, troops mass on your border, then disperse, mass on your border, then disperse, mass on your border, then disperse. And then one time they mass and you think they're going to disperse like the pattern, boom, they hit you. It's like a rhythm to throw you off, feint attack, nothing, boom, then I hit you. It's to wear down the North Koreans. And unfortunately, the North Koreans are starting to say stuff like, well, war with the U.S. is inevitable. And the North Koreans now have missiles and hydrogen bombs. It's one thing when you blow up a bomb about the equivalent of like Hiroshima, that's like a 10 KT weapon in a city. It would be horrible. But it wouldn't be like even the end of the city, although it would really, really, really be bad. And, the death toll would be horrendous. But there would be recovery within a while. But you start popping hydrogen bombs where you're talking like 200 KT range. That's something that like an area, once it gets hit with, you're talking massive mega casualties, mega deaths, millions of deaths. And you're talking that area pretty much being toast for a long time. And Then you talk about EMP weapons, where North Korea has a satellite that I believe is positioned above the United States. That thing would have to be come down almost immediately. I mean, who knows what's in that? Is that an EMP weapon? And EMP, in case you don't know, everyone freaks out about EMP. And some people are like, EMP is not that big a deal. They got most of that stuff shielded, blah, blah, blah. What EMP is like when a nuclear weapon goes off, certain types of elements, I forget which, like neutrons and stuff, flow through the air and it knocks a bunch of electrons loose, which float around and then couple over power lines and stuff. So it creates these really brief but really intense electric currents along wires and stuff. And most electronics that aren't hardened to things will blow. And the problem is your armor is only as good as the weakest link, especially when it comes to EMP. So without getting into it too much, there's just, the U.S. infrastructure is just so vast and has so many pieces that, some things are hard. Our military stuff, especially the Cold War era stuff, was very hard. And, I don't know about some of the newer stuff, because of budgets and stuff. Maybe the protection on it is a little bit less. But there are chinks in the armor, and they could be great chinks. And if you research it, we could be talking about, depending on how big the EMP weapons are, whether they take out part of the U.S. or the whole U.S. and the cascading failure with the power grid, blah, 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 blah. Without power, you can't pump gas unless you've got like a hand crank. You can't refrigerate stuff. Without gas, there's no transportation of food. I mean, just let your mind run with it, and it gets pretty dark. You don't need me to elaborate on that. But that's one of the things, like, are we going to let the dictatorship like North Korea have, 200 kiloton nuclear weapons when, in their schools from day one, they're taught pretty much to hate Americans? We forget that. And, it's a real bad situation. I'm not like a war hawk. I don't want to go to war with North Korea. I actually have no opinion on whether we should or not. I can kind of see it. But the amount of escalation that can happen, like, I think we're too used to fighting certain Middle East types where we bomb them, they run, They come at us asymmetrically, they hit us where we're weak, run, we send helicopters and bombers, and there's all these politically correct rules where we can't shoot or can shoot. But when we shoot, we blow them up and they run away. And I think we're too used to that. North Koreans aren't going to run away. Koreans fight. I mean, you ask anybody who's a Korean War veteran, the Koreans and fight, and then you got the Chinese. What are the Chinese going to do when all this happens? What are the Russians going to do? And, the big thing about this, I might get my sister on for like a little radio interview if anyone's interested. My sister actually was involved in making a documentary about North Korea. I don't know how much she can say because I don't know if the documentary's live yet. But it was very interesting because she was involved in this like a month or two ago, and she interviewed a lot of the DC types, former CIA heads. Kind of pretty cool for my sister, and got all their opinions, and they're scared. I mean, they take this stuff serious. Like this is almost like a done deal, like it's going to happen. And now we're talking about using what we call kinetic weapons. North Korea is not just, the threat isn't just their nukes or their army, their fanatical army. I mean, once we established air superiority, and as long as we got smart bombs coming in, their ground game would just be a slaughter. It would be really horrible to see all those poor North Korean soldiers just slaughtered en masse. They might get lucky in a few places before our air power can mass and overrun some Republic of South Korea and U.S. units. But in general, once we control the skies and start raining death, it'd be a slaughter. But, so I don't think that's the threat. We got the nuclear weapons. We probably have pretty good intelligence on where those are at. So those would probably be taken out. But then, what happens when you blow up radioactive material, there's questions there. I'm not talking about stuff just in the bombs, but I'm talking about their assembly plants and all that stuff, their processing stuff. And Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. And then they have all their VX nerve gas and sarin gas and all these artillery shells. That's probably the biggest threat, and that's where this could get really crazy. Because they've got all these like thousands of artillery pieces. I was reading about it a little more in depth. There's probably only 200 or 300 pieces that have really good range to wreak havoc on Seoul. The other one's I forget the details. I read it a month or two ago. But that's the thing that's going to be tough to get. And that's what they're talking about, either using nuclear weapons or what they call kinetic weapons. And I kept hearing this term, like kinetic weapons. Like, what are they talking about? And basically they're talking about dropping big, heavy things, Moab bombs. By the way, a side note on Moab bombs, they used to call them daisy cutters in Vietnam. They dropped them all the time. They want to clear out an LZ in the jungle. They dropped, essentially a Moab, what we call it today, and blow up, 30 or 40 acres worth of jungle, flatten it out, and then they land helicopters down. They didn't think twice about it. Now everybody's like, well, Moab should be considered, weapons of mass destruction. They're so huge, blah, blah, blah. War should be considered bad. I get it. But it's trying to sanitize it, and that's another rant for another time. But anyway, I was thinking they were talking about that type of stuff. But then there was some hints, like Rickards dropped this hint that they have stuff that can do about the same equivalent of nuclear weapons, but without the radiation. I'm like, what the hell could that be? And I started thinking. And then I started seeing all these people talking about the rods of God. If you Google the rods of God, it was an SDI, Strategic Defense Initiative concept from the Reagan era, Star Wars era, where basically they just put these huge, heavy tungsten rods in space that are so big, and they drop them from space that by the time they hit the Earth, they're traveling so fast, it essentially creates like this nuke effect. I'm not 100% sure it would be totally radiation-free, but it would be the equivalent of a nuke without a nuke. So I'm thinking we might have some classified stuff in space that they've actually been able to keep classified. If you were sad enough to listen to my other road rage thing, I talked about how just because we live in this, quote, information society, we think that everything that exists is on the internet, or somehow secretly, if we really are diligent, we can put together the pieces and track down really what goes on behind the scenes. No, we can't. There's stuff that goes on that is very compartmentalized and hidden that we will never know about. And that could be a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just saying that's how it is. You shouldn't assume that because you have an internet connection that all books are open to you. They're not. Some are closed solid. You won't even know how to find the information on them. And I think we've gotten spoiled with so much information we think we can just know everything. And this might be a case where one of those closed books opens up. Oh, we did have space-based weapons. We did have a secret way of putting really heavy things into space. So, we could see the gloves come off and some pretty amazing weaponry shown. Like someone pointed out, when the Chinese do missile testing, there's a lot of UFO reports that happen in China. Lots of them. Somebody started going, wonder if those are USAF UFOs. Now my wife yanking my leash, wondering where I am. Still another hour and a half, honey. Yeah. And then I saw this one video, and it was an English TV station, and it was Iran doing some testing. And they zoom in on these clouds, and all of a sudden the clouds just part, like something shoots through them incredibly fast. And it's like, what the hell? But excuse me, I need some water, but I don't have any. But they slow down the frames to try to see something, and you can't see something, but you definitely see the clouds part as something flies through. Now, is this, ET, or is this USAF? I don't know. It's interesting. So if there is a war, and I think we should pray that there isn't, one of the things that I saw, I've been worried about North Korea because my father was involved in the military-industrial complex, and I've seen, not to overblow, things, but I've seen some stuff about Korea It's just, a war would be really, really bad. Really, really bad. And I think Mathis and these guys understand that. I hope they do. But I'm worried about the public at large, and Joe Football going, yeah, that Kim Jong-un, he needs to be blown up. Let's go get him. It's like, dude, there's going to be casualties on our side, lots of them. There's probably going to be lots of South Korean civilians killed in Seoul in really bad ways. There could be escalations where it comes into an all-out nuclear war between the U.S. and China and Russia. That's an outside chance, but it's a chance. Isn't that something we, generally like to avoid? But at the same time, if North Korea is giving nuclear weapons and supposedly dirty bombs as well to the Iranians, and they're dispersed, we're talking about existential threats to the United States, and I don't know if the current administration is just going to try to play it, well, if they kill us, we can get them. They're kind of proactive, maybe. I don't know. So I think we need to be praying. Plus, North Koreans, you're talking about people that on this earth, there's a lot of places that get it really bad, and North Korea is one of them. You're born into this society where you have to constantly show praise for these fat little leaders that are leading you. If you show even a hint of questioning, depending on who you're around, that can not only get you killed, but your entire family killed. And you're poor and you're starving. And then you're just, it's, if anything, I hope whatever happens here, that all those people are liberated. That's my prayer. That they could get some prosperity, that they could get some freedom, that they could, just live life. That's kind of what we all want to do, right? And that's my prayer for them. And I think that, hopefully if there is a conflict, even though it's going to be horrible, hopefully it will result in their freedom, And I pray that not a lot of innocent people on all sides get killed. And I don't know, it's crazy. This is very serious, and I think people are kind of like not paying attention as much as they should be. And I don't know, there was one other topic I want to talk about tonight, but I think that's good enough. So here's episode 2 of Road Rage. Take it or leave it. Thanks for listening, and good night.